All right, welcome back, everybody, to Pave the Way podcast. I'm your host, Greg Helbeck, and today I have a very, very special guest. I have Wall Street Journal best-selling author Jay Papasan of The One Thing, one of my, I'd say, writing heroes. Wrote one of my favorite books that changed my business, and it is really cool to have him on the show. So, Jay, thank you so much for taking the time today to come on the show and add some value.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Greg. And you pronounced my last name correctly. My mom is so happy right now, so thank you.
I'll say it once, right? So hopefully I don't screw it up on the second end. I kind of winged it there. So awesome, Jay. Well, we'll get into a lot of stuff on productivity and time blocking today. But before we get into all of that, would you mind giving the listeners a little bit of your background and how you kind of got to where you are today?
Sure. I guess the elevator kind of ride version of the biography. I grew up in Memphis, always loved books, studied writing in college, ended up going overseas to work as a translator for a while, went to grad school in New York City and got a job in publishing. Again, books being the theme, right? All the way through like book nerd to college book nerd to professional book nerd. So I got to work on some really nice books at HarperCollins, a couple of bestsellers, and had a great mentor there, a guy named David Hershey. Who tolerated me for a few years but taught me a lot. And then I met my wife. We moved to Austin, Texas. And very quickly thereafter, I took a job at a small company called Keller Williams Realty. And this was in 2000. Back then, there were about 6,700 agents in the company, and there were, I think, less than 30 employees. And ended up connecting with the founder, Gary Keller, when I heard he was going to write a book. Actually, the conversation happened in a bathroom. He was plunging a toilet because he owned the building and was making a cracking wise about how he was still not too good to do the hard work, something like that. I reminded him of my publishing background. He told me, he confirmed that he was writing a book, and this would have been the summer of 2002. And we started writing together. Our first book was The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which is a career guide for real estate. That went on to sell over 1 million copies, and he put my name on the cover above my protest because I thought it would be a very small niche book. And then we've gone on to help or write with our names on it or behind the scenes 10 other titles, the most recent of which was The One Thing. That was a 4.5-year journey from concept to completion, and it's still out there. It's now 1.7 million copies, I believe, in 35 languages. So when you get one of those, you just write it, so I still support it, still love it. But that's the kind of the elevator trip version of Jay's biography, professional biography.
Yeah, no, awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with my listeners. So it seems like you've always had a bug for writing and, getting connected with the right people. Gary Keller, out of all people, when Keller Williams wasn't the behemoth it is now, was a great move. And it's fun. You guys obviously wrote The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, which is a book I'm sure a lot of my listeners are familiar with. That's a mandatory reading, in my opinion, if you want to get started investing in properties. So let's kind of dive right into the content. Once again,
Sure.
Thanks for the background. So, I know the answer to this question, but some of my listeners might not get it. And I think productivity and the one thing, all that kind of stuff are things that people struggle with a lot. So what's the whole, the main concept, behind the whole one thing theory? I mean, it's pretty obvious. And then why does it work so well for people? Because I think this is one of these books, before I let you answer, I think people read this book, and everyone I've talked to about this book, I do a book review every week. I'm a huge reader, book a week. And people are like, oh my God, The One Thing, it's like my favorite book ever. So why do you think this concept, it really resonates so well with people? Because this book keeps selling, and it's not an accident.
So one of the things that Gary taught me when we were working on The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, we were talking about how you can't time the market.
Yeah.
And he said, it's not about what time you showed up on the corner. It's that you were on the corner every day looking, and then the opportunity drove past. And I kind of feel like timing found us a little bit. I think that we showed up, this book showed up at a time where people were feeling overwhelmed. We have so many opportunities in this flat digital world, right? You can work from home, you can start a business. There are just so many opportunities, right? And then we also have all the obligations, because we're possibly the child of aging parents, or maybe we've got small children of our own, or health issues. I mean, you just name it. So people are feeling a lot of overwhelm. And I think the essence of the book is a very simple approach, not a complicated one, a very simple approach to getting very clear about your priority and then understanding how to tackle it. And I said priority in the singular tense, right? So, but I think it's an approach that you can apply to work or you can apply to home. I apply it to try to being a better dad and a better husband. It's just a simple approach. I shouldn't have a different approach for everything I want to do. It should just be something that I can learn and master this little thing and then aim it where I want to go.
Absolutely. No, that's a great answer. I think it's something like you said with all the information we have now, all the digital, I think there's a new book out called Digital Minimalism that Cal Newport wrote. And
Love Cal.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, right? So I think this book really, you can drill down on the stuff that actually matters, the 80-20 principle. So let's get into one of the big things in the book that I think really resonated with me. And I'm telling you, this one idea in the book, the time blocking concept, changed my business forever. I buy and sell real estate for a living. I do it remotely. I live in California, so I have to do this in other areas of the country. And this time blocking strategy, I'm actually in the middle of it right now. It's funny if I show you my calendar here. I practice what I preach. So why is time blocking so powerful? Because I think it's something that people, they know about it, but yet they don't do it. And I think if they did do it, they would be blown away with what they can achieve. So I'll let you kind of piggyback that.
We found research, it's funny, we found the research after we published the book. So depending on when you bought your book, you may or may not have it in there. We added it as soon as we found it.
Copies.
There we go. They were doing some research around getting people to exercise for 20 minutes a day. And they had a control group, right? They said, just go exercise for 20 minutes a day. They had a motivation group, and they gave them a pamphlet and said, if you exercise 20 minutes a day, you'll have all these health benefits. And then they had what they called the intention group. And they had the same motivational pamphlet, but they had one additional task: to write down a commitment, right? An intentionality statement about when and where they would exercise for 20 minutes each day. So on this day, at this time, in this place, I will exercise for 20 minutes. So you add all those elements together, and to me, that's a calendar invite. But when they looked at the results, the control group was around 33% were successful. The motivation group was around 35% successful. And then you look at the group that had to do the intentional statement. They had to think about when and where they were going to do the thing they wanted to do. They had to navigate their week, essentially. They were 90-something% more likely to do it. So it was a 3X in terms of getting it done. So when I think about the magic here, one, we already know how to follow our calendars, but we often make commitments without actually navigating our future time. This forces you to go and say, okay, I know I want to do this. Now, when am I going to do it? I mean, you live this all the time. You see friends and they're like, we should get together. We should go to lunch.
Oh my
you should
God.
come to my house, right? Does that happen very often?
No.
No, because we don't get out our calendars and make it happen. So those kind of acquaintances that we're constantly wishing we got in touch with more, it's the same with our intentions. If we don't go through that process of figuring out when and where we're going to do things, it just so much less likely that we'll do it.
Absolutely. It's so funny you say that, because I heard a good quote, I think from a Brian Tracy book one time, and he said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Everyone wants to hang out. You want to, oh man, I miss you. Well, it's funny you say that, Jay, because I really started implementing the whole calendar thing maybe a year and a half ago. And now not even only for business things, like I time block, everything that's important for my business to run, but even like meeting up with friends. I'm like, meet up with Joe at 6:30. And now I know my day is around. I'm like, okay, at 6:30, I got to go meet up with Joe. And now that's set. Yeah. It's known, and we're rocking and rolling. And to end on the time blocking here, this is something that was in the book. I think it's very subtle in the book, so you have to read it a few times to pick it up. In the book, you and Gary share about, really you can only work on like a cognitive task for so long. And I believe in the book it says about 4 hours a day working on your one thing is really all you can really do, to be the most effective and efficient. Why is it 4 hours? Because that's definitely not a short time, but it's not like, I think a lot of people that they get caught up in the whole, oh, I got to work 19 hours a day. Well, really, what are you doing for 19 hours to justify doing something like that? So let's kind of piggyback on that too.
And before we jump there, I've got my placeholder. I'm absolutely going to answer that question. You said the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I actually heard this weekend. I'll just share a guy named Keith Cunningham, one of my favorite business authors, definitely worth checking out. He said, hell is meeting the person that you could have become.
Oh, I love that.
I know. You just made me think of that, and I'm repeating it so that it'll be engraved in my brain.
I love it. Awesome.
All right, so And now I did forget. Dadgummit. So remind me of the question real quick.
You're talking about, there's the myth of I got to work 25 hours a
Oh,
day.
totally. I'm there. So I don't think it was like any mystical thing. We were just looking up and going, if you were to spend 50% of your workday on your most important task, and there's a lot of research around this idea of the 10,000 hour rule, the rule of mastery.
Yeah.
Look up, that's like 4 hours a day times 10 years.
That's a lot.
So the people who made massive investments in themselves tended to show up as the people who were best in their field. So that's kind of where that came from. But there's also a lot of nuance in living it. We were teaching a class this weekend, and so many overachievers, when they get the idea of time blocking, they time block 60 hours a week. And the reality is you've got to build a lot of slack into your life, right? If you're working on your priorities, even just for a couple of hours a day, those priorities will dictate how the rest of the day goes, right?
Absolutely.
And you've got to have some time to put out fires if you're going to have a big life. So it's just, if you get beyond about 4 hours a day of being really rigid, you're going to be miserable. I'll just tell you that much. And you're going to be failing a lot of people because you'll have zero flexibility to address life. And life shows up almost on a daily basis, right? You flip houses.
Yeah.
Holy crap, there's a surprise in every house. And if you don't build slack into your schedule to deal with it, they become big infernos instead of little brush fires.
I could not agree more with that statement. And it's something it's funny you say that because I still do my 4 hours a day. I've been doing it for a year and a half now. And like I said, it's changed the game for me because it all has to do with lead generation, new deals in the pipeline, what's going to make the company money and be productive. And it's cumulative, right? So I'll start with a 90-minute time block in the morning, and now it's 7 in the morning. I only have 2.5 hours more of like that important deep work. So it's super cumulative. Like right now it's 11:30 in California, and I only have, an hour and a half left to go with my real work. So then the rest of the day I can put out fires, I can network like you said. And I think my challenge for the listeners listening to the show right now, if you can just implement this one idea that Jay and I are talking about, scheduling 4 hours of your most productive activities, there's a very good chance you're going to change your business or your life, depending on what you're doing. And then allowing, like Jay said, the time to put out fires, because the bigger you're going to get, the more fires there's going to be. Would you say?
I'm gonna lower the bar because I want people to be successful.
Okay.
I actually don't recommend people start with 4 hours.
Okay.
I think they aspire to it. I think it's remarkable that you did, and kudos, Greg. That is really remarkable that you dove in and did that. Most people would do that for a couple of weeks, and then they would freak out. Yeah. So I usually start with, can you commit to 30 minutes a day?
Okay. Baby steps.
Start with the smallest domino principle. We talked about that in the book. What's the smallest domino that you just know you'll knock over every day?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to think of the behavioral psychologist. I saw him at South by Southwest, and he talked about if you want to build the habit of flossing your teeth, right, you piggyback it on another habit and you floss one tooth. And everybody's laughing like, what do you mean one tooth? And he's like, okay, if you floss one tooth, you can just cry victory and go do your thing. But 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, you'll floss all of them. Yeah. The point is, when you break a streak, there is this negative momentum that shows up, and we want to avoid that. So start small, think big, start small. So start with 30 minutes a day. Okay. And you might look up and go, I'm having so much fun, I'm not going to quit this. That's awesome. Yeah. But start with something you can commit to doing for at least 66 days. That's how long it takes, we believe, to form a habit on average. Then you'll have the habit of doing it, and you can start growing that habit. That would be my advice.
I'm actually going to recommend that. That is much better advice, because it's funny now looking back as you gave the little recommendation there, the adjustment. It actually started with an hour, then 2 hours, and 3 hours. It's such a habit now. I'm just used to 4 hours a day, whatever. But
the curse of knowledge, right? You're stuck with where you are in the benefit. So you want everybody to get there fast, and I can get it. I mean, when I've been in my groove and I'm writing 4 hours a day, the world is a great place.
It's amazing.
That's very intimidating, because most people are like, I don't have 40 minutes a day, much less 4 hours. And everybody could set their alarm 30 minutes earlier, right? They can still stay on schedule with their Netflix shows. They can watch Chernobyl on HBO, whatever it is that's keeping them up. They can still get up 30 minutes earlier and knock out that one little time block.
Absolutely. And that's a game changer. So I appreciate the adjustment there. So here's the last main concept I want to chat about is this is something it took me, Jay. I've read your book 10 plus times, and I mean that. I study this thing. It's so important in my business, my life. And the concept that you have in this book, the entrepreneurial and purposeful kind of concept, it's one of the roadblocks to success, I believe. I want to dive deep on that, but I just want to let you know that one idea alone is really how I operate most of my marketing, right, for my business. And, so I want you to kind of, I'll hand over the reins to you here. So, in the book, you talk about there's that myth between, the entrepreneurial strategy and then the purposeful strategy. And this is a big mistake. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to my show, they do a lot of activity, but they don't spend enough time reflecting to figure out, is this the best thing? Is this the best use of my time? Is this the best strategy? So let's dive deep on that to really end the main content of the show.
It's a cultural touchstone. Gary's been teaching some version of this, I think, going back to maybe the mid-90s.
Wow.
And we call it going from E to P.
Mm-hmm.
And E stands for entrepreneurial, and P is purposeful.
Yeah, that was it.
And you don't need to do this everywhere in your life. You just need to do this where success really matters to you. So around your one thing, right? So you were saying your 4 hours is mostly around lead gen, right? Which is a lot.
Yeah.
In a lot of businesses, that is the one thing. Yeah. So we want to be purposeful about that. The best analogy I can come up with that I've experienced, have you ever played golf?
Oh, yeah. Fun.
All right. So the first time you hold a golf club as a kid, you kind of hold it like a baseball bat. And then someone shows you, no, the way to hold it is you want your index finger to overlap your pinky finger, and it just feels so unbelievably awkward.
So weird.
But if you don't get purposeful about the foundation of your golf swing, you're not going to be successful. There is no one playing PGA golf that swings it like a baseball bat that I'm aware of, nor has there been in decades, probably.
Yeah, since Happy Gilmore.
So there are models of success that matter. And if we're committed to success in our field, we need to become a student of the game, not our game, but the game. So I'm going to study my field. My field's writing and business. And I want to know what's right there at the edge in terms of what makes people great. And I want to be learning from the very best in my industry. And sometimes we get to push the envelope ourselves. But being purposeful means that it's not just about the best I can do. We're going to adopt the best that can be done. And that's something that Gary's asked me a few times. Like, Jay, I see you put a lot of effort into this. Was this the best you could do or the best that could be done? And that's a code question was I being entrepreneurial or purposeful? Was I working from a proven model in how I'm approaching this? Or was I just making it up? And most of us, most entrepreneurs, we call it entrepreneurial for a reason, right? It's not that they're bad at anything. They're just willing to do everything that it takes to get it done.
Yeah.
But sometimes they have to hit the brakes and say, for this thing matters so much, we're going to approach it differently. That's, to me, the heart of going from E to P is you're trying to be a master of the game, not just your personal one.
That's so true. So if we had to use an example, we use the golf example, that made a ton of sense. If we had to kind of relate something like this to either being a real estate investor or being a real estate agent, what would you see as a common maybe mistake that newer folks make when where they're being entrepreneurial, but they could be purposeful?
Easy. Okay. So the investor, they have not been purposeful in identifying their criteria. And so they go out and instead of looking for something very specific, they'll buy anything. And so they start trying to force deals into their pipeline so they can have activity versus doing the right thing. And there's nothing that shuts down investors faster than buying on the wrong criteria. They could get lucky. The market could bail them out. But we all know that if the market shifts at all, that can be a really dangerous situation. So lots of investors start by not, they mess up. They're being entrepreneurial. They ask their brother-in-law and their best buddy about what their criteria should be instead of actually going out and talking to some investors in their local market, going to an investor club, trying to learn from people who've made some of the mistakes they shouldn't have to repeat, and then be a little bit more purposeful in establishing their criteria. A lot of business owners, they spin up their business, their coffee shop or whatever that is so fast, they don't actually stop to understand, well, maybe I needed a bank account. Maybe I need an entity. Maybe I need a P&L instead of a bank account to run my business off of. Those are all standards, right? I mean, for just minimum standards for being purposeful about going about it. But because we get so excited in our big idea, we rush out and take action. And that can work out sometimes, but often it can also be a trap.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. It's so I'm so glad you said that, the whole criteria thing, because that is something, especially if you're going to be buying rental properties. I mean, you got to know what you're going after, how you're going to acquire it, because then when you can get like that avatar of what you're looking for, now you got to just go out and find it. You know, whether it's using agents or marketing or what, you just know what you're looking for. So when that thing you're looking for comes to your desk, you're purposeful enough to be able to pull the trigger on that with confidence, and you don't have to spin your wheels. That's a huge mistake that I used to make. So Jay,
Some people
that's
don't even know whether they're buying cash flow or appreciation. Sometimes you get both, but in different markets, you're getting one thing or the other, not both.
so
So
true.
just think, what is the outcome I'm even looking for that drives my criteria?
Yeah.
Because if I'm buying for asset appreciation, I have one set of criteria. If I'm buying for cash flow, it's a whole different ballgame. So,
Absolutely.
the subheading of our whole book should be getting clarity, right? If we're really just clear about what's important, we tend to make so much better decisions. But stopping to get clear is something so, I don't know why we so rarely do it. I don't know what the deal is.
You know, it's funny you say that. I think and this is something that I've been like really reflecting on recently, is like, I feel like as entrepreneurs, we feel like we have to always be running really fast to quote unquote get things done. But what's that quote? I'm sure you've heard of it. You know, if I had 8 hours to chop a tree down, I'd spend the first 7 sharpening the axe. Like, we got to get more into, like, I spend a lot of time planning and reflecting, and that is some of the best time I spent in silence with no phone, because when I go out and I act now, I know exactly what I'm acting on. I know the mistakes that I made. I know what to look out for, who to talk to, who's someone that I can learn from, the whole modeling concept. So this stuff is so powerful. So Jay, as we wind down the show, we're getting to the very end here. You know, you've been in real estate for a very long time. You've been very successful. You know, if you had to give some parting advice to someone on this show, we've already given a ton of it out so far, on maybe one more action item they can do just to be more productive in whatever they're doing, because we also have people who are not in real estate listening to the show. What would that 80-20 advice be?
Great question. And I was going down the path of talking to real estate investors, and then you broadened it out to a more general productivity goal. So to me, the three things are you clear about what you need to be doing, right? What's your one thing? So first off, I think we talked about that. Once you know that thing, you time block it. There's 2 pieces of the puzzle. The third piece, so if I was going to add to that to kind of complete the formula, is can you build a bunker around that? And we have a whole model in the book around, when you know that this is my most important activity, do you have a place that you can go where you know you can be productive? I mean, it looks like like you're in the attic space of your house or whatever, right?
My loft of my house out here, yes.
There you go. You got your loft, right? So you got a place where you can go where you have a better than average chance of not being disturbed. And I've talked to people who go into basement conference rooms that are rarely used, that one lady that was sitting in her car with the air conditioner on to make her most important calls, because those are the only places they wouldn't be disturbed. So you start with that. That environment, you need to bring everything you need to be productive into it, right? You store provisions, you sweep for minds, which for most of us is just go to your phone. And on my iPhone, if I start it up, I can swipe down and there's a little half moon. Hit that. Just like you were going to a Broadway play, you don't want your phone to distract you. Yep. And then focus on what you're there for just that 30 minutes, right? And then the last step is just ask people for help. The people who are most likely to interrupt you for that first 30 minutes of your time block that we talked about earlier, right? Tell them, kids, husband, wife, coworker, whatever, this next 30 minutes is really important to me, and it's also really important to us. Can I count on you not only to not disturb me, but hold me accountable? Like at 8 o'clock, I'm supposed to be in my loft doing my podcast. If you see me down here futzing with the garbage, will you please kick me in the butt and tell me to go upstairs? I give you permission. And when you make it not just about your success, but about theirs, they're a lot more likely to support you. So to me, that's kind of like the trinity of productivity, knowing what it is you truly need to be doing, time blocking it, and then protecting your time block.
That is amazing advice that is super actionable. And it's stuff that, like I said, I do this on a daily basis. It's funny you bring up accountability. I got a roommate. I just moved down the street here. And I told my roommate I was not getting up when I should be getting up. And I started holding myself accountable. I said, listen, dude, if I don't get up by 5 a.m., I'm going to pay you $200. So like, I'm going to walk into your room. I'm going to drop $200 bills right by your head. And I'm going to say, have a good day, buddy. So I think I'm 7 days in a row without breaking that chain, you know? So it's funny when you start holding yourself accountable, magical things happen, especially with like a negative consequence like that.
Here's a trick. I'll put a twist into it. Put $200 in an envelope and go ahead and give it to him.
Okay.
Say, if I don't get up, you can just go deposit this.
Ah,
And even Welsh. Once I was working with a lady that was looking for accountability, and she wrote a letter to her ex saying that he was right about everything, and then postmarked it and said, if I don't show up, you can put this in the mail. Let me just say, she was very motivated.
oh my goodness. That is that's a
Well,
good
you want to, what's the step you can take in your accountability that allows you not to fudge on it? Because
yeah.
then you really are acting with some serious urgency, right?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
And your $200, it can't go to charity, right? They need to buy like an Xbox or a video game that you can't play, or they're going to send it to a political party or something that you absolutely abhor, right? So pile it in, man. If it's really important, pile it on so that you're really, really motivated to do the things that we know matter most. And getting up early, man, that's, my kids taught me that when they were babies, and I just kept the habit. Those morning hours are, I believe, super precious.
It's gold. In the book, you guys talk about it. You guys call it the run of the day, and it's true. You know, you get up in the morning, you have that momentum. You know, Hal Elrod, I'm sure you know him. I mean, the
His
miracle
kids go to my kids' school. Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, you guys are all in Austin. That's why I actually did a deal in Austin a couple months ago over on Elmira in MLK area. So
Nice.
most of my stuff is in Dallas, but I've done
There you
good.
go.
So
It's a good market too. They're both.
Yeah. High appreciation to say the least. Oh my God, crazy up in Austin. Well, Jay, listen, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking your valuable time to add value to my listeners. This has been a blast. If people were looking to find out more about you, the one thing, you know, the book, you know, we'll put the Amazon link in there. What's the best way for them to get in touch with either you or your team, or just finding out more about the one thing? Because you guys have so much to offer.
Sure. I just send them to theonething.com, and it's with the number one. So the number one thing.com. We've got all kinds of free materials. You don't even have to buy the book. We've got tons of free classes. We've got little mini courses on everything that we've talked about that are free. And people can go there, watch the videos, kind of get up ahead of steam. And if they want more, then they can buy the book or do whatever. But yeah, I would just send them to theonething.com.
We'll send them to the website. We'll have them check it out. Well, Jay, thank you so much for your valuable time. I really appreciate it, and hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks.